housing crisis. Median home price in my area of Thousand Oaks is $1.1 million for a starter home that's 40 years old and probably ranges around maybe 1,500 to 1,700 square feet, right? Income to qualify for that right now, 20% down to comfortably afford it, what, north of $300K a year?
Comfortably, yeah.
Okay, that's not what people...
Especially with the interest rates.
Okay, median income in California is what?
80.
80,000. Okay, so who is buying homes right now?
Oh, sorry. In Los Angeles, it's just under 80. I'm not sure what it is in California, in the whole state.
Okay, so LA is 80. Thousand Oaks is going to be a little bit higher.
Yeah.
My friends that are selling homes, the majority of people purchasing them, who do you think they are?
All cash buyers.
Who's buying?
Institutions?
No.
Who?
Parents.
Well, I mean, that's the only way you can do it, right?
Yeah, so I've talked to a friend. The last 5 homes that were purchased were for people our age or younger, and parents bought it for them.
Yeah.
Right? It's just too expensive. So if we're trying to take more of a holistic approach, let's say more of a free market way of solving this problem, how do you solve the housing crisis?
You add supply.
Add supply.
You have a bridge approach, and then you have a long-term approach. The
Okay.
bridge approach is you create incentives in order to drive people to build homes that are affordable, and then you tag on the Section 8 subsidy in order to make it affordable for them in the moment.
Okay.
Long-term solution is you ramp up. You take basically what like ED1 in Los Angeles did in terms of creating incentives and reducing the bureaucracy of getting things done, and you apply that broadly. That brings more people in. Now you're building more, and now you're putting more supply on the market, and now costs are naturally in a free market way going down. They're not being, I don't want to say manipulated because manipulated is not the right word, but they're not being artificially driven down because you're providing incentives on the affordable side and putting a Section 8 voucher on top of it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So then somewhere like Texas, right? We just saw last year that we just saw this year that Texas rents plummeted, right? They dropped 22% this year from the year prior, due to Texas's approach. I'm speaking about Austin. Austin deregulated, made it even easier to build real estate, which is a statement for us doing business in California. They put 50,000 new units online. There was oversaturation. Prices dropped, right? I was in Arizona last week. I told you this, that when you go there and you see all the development, you see it, you hear it. I mean, it is crazy growth, right?
We saw it when we were in Idaho together, 6 months ago?
Same, yeah.
I mean, everywhere we turned, there was construction.
Yeah, it looks nothing like California, right? And then hearing them, occupancy is dropping. They're having to give rent concessions because of it. So if you really want to solve it long term, it's adding supply. But I would say that those 2 examples, it's not even that long term. I mean, they did this within 3 years, right? California's not.
Their gap when they started, though, was not as significant as where California is.
Yeah, because they deregulated and the rate. Well,
but even before they deregulated, the margin of where they needed to be versus where they were was not as wide as where it is in California.
Okay, that's fair. That's a totally fair point. Looking at California, though, California as a whole is not really taking that approach. Are they?
Correct.
Okay. Or you can say they're trying to find more ways to make real estate easier to build, but mainly due to probably CEQA, even with the little things they're doing, it's still brutal.
I mean, give the example of what you told me with Sacramento.
Oh, with Capitol Hill?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they want to do a redevelopment of Capitol Hill, and now you have the policymakers, the politicians, actually having to build for once, and they can't get it done. Like 8 years goes by, and there's no development happening, and they get so frustrated. But instead of changing the policy, they just make the project CEQA exempt, and then they get it done, right? So it's the hardest part about politicians, right? A lot of the things that they're creating policy for, they have no experience in. And so they don't really understand that what they're creating is making the desired outcome, basically impossible.
I mean, yeah, CEQA by itself was created, I think, in like 1970 or in the early 70s. And it was solely done to protect natural resources.
Right.
And now it's become this agency that is effectively stopping projects for almost any reason. If a labor union brings a lawsuit, a competitor brings a lawsuit, or one of the NIMBY guys brings a lawsuit to a public hearing where you're trying to get a project across the finish line and they bring it up, your project is dead, usually for like 12 to 18 months. And so it has gone beyond what its original intent was and is being abused.
Right. Yeah. And so for people not in our world, just so you have an idea of what this looks like, if you have a project that's going through the entitlement process with the city, which basically means you are working with the city to get the project, at least on paper, or the unit count approved. And then at that point, you'll go through all your working drawings and you'll get to your permits. So it's basically meaning that you've done all the work with the city to make sure that your project will fit. It, sits within the policy. It doesn't have a negative impact to the community, et cetera. When you're in the entitlement process, the day before it goes to city council, you'll typically see a suit that comes forward with a CEQA, using CEQA as a potential violation. And the reason, or maybe not the reason, what you see in a lot of cases is unions using that to create leverage to basically force the operator to hire the union to do the work, and then all of a sudden they let go of the complaint, right? That drives up prices, right? And it de-incentivizes investors.
It drives up cost, which in turn drives up prices.
Yeah, correct.
So, and in the end, the renter is always going to end up paying for it.
Correct.
Which is the unfortunate part. Again, drives up cost.
Okay. So seeing what California's approach is, right? They're not competitive with other states as it pertains to building, right? Fair to say?
Yep.
And their laws so heavily favor the tenant. And then somewhere like LA does something like creates the mansion tax, which I think was a massive fumble, right? Well, what do they do now that housing has become so unrealistic for everyone? How do they fix this problem? Well, they're going to try to solve affordable housing first, right? They're going to try to solve the immediate. So what is LA doing? Like you mentioned ED1. What is ED1?
It's effectively a rollback of all the things that you just mentioned, right? So just to lay the groundwork again for people, when you are in the development space, you typically find a location where you think it's going to be favorable to build. And you say, all right, let's say this was a shopping center. I think this would be great for 50 units, a 50-unit apartment building. I now go to the city and I begin the entitlement process. I want to convert this shopping center into an apartment building, and so that requires getting it rezoned or entitled. That process in and of itself, you're talking about 12 to maybe sometimes 30 months, just depending on the project, the city that you're in, how complicated it is. Once you get it approved by the city saying, yes, you can now build apartments on this, you then go into the actual build out on paper, building everything out on the blueprints. They're called MEPs, your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers. All of the stakeholders that are involved in building the property, you build it on paper. And that process, you build it out, you submit it to the planning department, the building of housing and safety. They review it. They get back to you notes. You go back, you modify, you submit it again. That process takes 12 to 24 months. So you're now in on this project for 5 years and you haven't even put a shovel in the ground yet. And that's why it costs so much, because the only way to make money on the back end, you got to charge the top of the market rents just to make it work. And so rolling back all of that bureaucratic challenges is effectively what ED1 accomplished. We're going to create specific units inside of building and safety and the planning department if you're committed to doing affordable housing, so that we can move your projects at the top of the list.
Okay, so let's use us as the example, because there are definitely stories about somebody trying to entitle a project and it taking 7 years. Let's take an experienced firm like us. How long is it going to take us to get through entitlements and permits?
We just started construction on a project that we began in 2019, and it's 2025.
Okay. where I'm getting at though, let's remove 2020. Let's say we are working with a city in, let's say San Diego, we have projects, Santa Monica, Ventura. We're working with a city not considering the 2020 issue.
Okay.
How long is it taking us to entitle and permit?
12 to 24 months. Oh, entitle and permit?
Both, 3 years.
At least.
Okay,
Yeah.
so quick timeline 3.
Quick, yeah. Favorable, 3 years.
Okay, so if we're getting projects entitled and permitted in California 3 years on the fast side, it's going to be 3 years on the fast side until we can actually break ground, and then 2 years to build. So we're 5 years before you actually realize something. ED1, faster, right? What does it mean, though, for you doing affordable housing, 100% affordable housing, right? Does that mean that you are sacrificing return as an investor? If you can't charge market rate and your rents are significantly held back, how do you make money?
Yeah, so there's 2 issues that go into play when it comes to making money in real estate development. Time, which we just discussed, and then cost, which is the next thing. So how much does it actually cost for me to build out an apartment building, let's say? There's typically like a cost per unit that you end up looking at between your hard costs, your soft costs, and then your financing costs. You aggregate all those together, divided by the number of units, and you get your cost per unit. One of the big variables in that cost item comes down to obviously financing costs is huge, and then also your utilities, LADWP, because you got to put in new metering, you got to put in like the right infrastructure, and you are typically bearing the brunt of that expense. On the cost side, what ED1 provides is it actually subsidizes and eliminates or reimburses those related expenses from the builder. So basically, the city funneled tens of millions of dollars to LADWP to then turn around to the builder and say, hey, if you're going to build affordable housing, we're going to subsidize the water, the sewer, the electrical, a lot of these expenses. And so you're now driving down your cost for actually building the unit. So by the combination of getting there faster and getting there cheaper allows for you to now provide rents that are more affordable, right? You don't have to charge the top of the market rents, like $6,000 for a 2-bedroom unit. You can now charge something that's more affordable. So let's pause there and say, now you're putting something in the market that's more reasonable. Can we go into the Section 8 side of it now?
Wait, hold on. I want you to break down let's take a market rate example and affordable housing rate example, right? And I want you to consider the ED1 incentive, because without the ED1 incentive, you're not doing 100% affordable housing. Right?
So let's give a real example. So we're building a building right now where the cost per unit is, I think, $420,000 a door.
All in.
Yeah,
acquisition costs, finance costs.
For market rate product, like, Class A, top of the line, beautiful building, top of the line rents. It's about $420,000 to $450,000 a unit. Jump over to the ED1 project that we're about to start. It's a $9 million project. It's 38 units. Do the math. It's $240,000 a unit. $450,000, $240,000. Significant cost savings by pursuing the ED1 route for us as a builder.
Okay, so it's about almost half of the cost per unit to do this.
Yeah.
Right? As far as density goes, is there a density bonus tagged to ED1?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing our first ED1 project. It's on an 8,000 square foot lot, and we're putting 38 units on it. You're not getting 38 units on an 8,000 square foot lot historically, right? An 8,000 square foot lot in LA is a lot of people's size of their lot is on their homes. So it's not small, but it's not that big.
How many stories?
I think we're doing 4 or 5 stories on the property.
Yeah, it's interesting because the first thing I thought about was San Diego, but it's a different market.
Yeah, San Diego is different. I mean, San Diego is also 6,000 square foot lot, and it's market rate.
And they allowed us to go higher.
Yeah.